Hello?
I don't.
Uh,
I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, Kala Chanji's just going to put it in the chat. Indra, do you want to go and then we'll try to get Kala Chanji next?
Sure. Hare Krishna. Dhanyavad. I have a question which I have written out. Maybe that's more helpful. So I have a question related to the Sangha about safe space and inviting other people into it. So like with the milk brahmana, will it affect the inner Sangha when an outsider comes and just sits and witnesses? Or could it possibly even harm the guest because it could be too intense? So I'm just asking this in regards to the upcoming retreat. So I was thinking, I don't know, maybe sometimes my desire for outreach is like too pushy and I want to, you know, bring my mom and I want to bring my friends and I want to bring my husband. And so I was just wondering, like, yeah, what is your take on this? Because obviously when there's like an outsider, it also affects the whole mood, you know, within the setting.
Yeah, I think you can bring whomever you like, and then, you know, we'll try to speak accordingly so that everyone benefits. It tends to broaden the talk in order to bring those people in a little bit. And at the same time, when it goes them a little on the outside. So too high for some, too low for others is a problem I am accustomed to dealing with, and so I wouldn't hesitate if I were you to invite others. If Poland is still there in July.
Thank you.
Hope so. Okay.
Okay, so Kalachanji, do you want to try speaking again? And then, yeah, we'll see if we can hear you. Oh, and Garuda's frozen.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, you were just frozen for a second.
Okay.
Let me try to unmute Kalachanji. Kalachanji, can you hear me? Yeah, I can't hear Kalachanji either.
It says that her
yeah
is muted.
Yeah,
Maybe she needs to unmute herself.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute her for her. Yeah, we'll just try the next question and I'll just connect with her via chat. Sajan, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you, Didi. Dandavats Maharaj. I've concluded my study for the time being of the Charita, Caitanya-Carita of Murari Gupta, and one of the things that I noted within it was that there's a Brahmin named Krishnadasa who takes Mahaprabhu on tour of all of the 12 forests of Vrindavan and the surrounding area and like that. And I was wondering, I know it's not Krishnadasa Kaviraj, I know that, but I was wondering if you knew like which Krishnadasa was it, and is it the same one perhaps who wrote the song Jai Radhe, Jai Krishna, Jai Vrindavan, like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I really doubt that they're the same. And again, they're different. We talked about this last time. I believe different biographical texts vary in their details. According to Chaitanya-Carita, it was not a Krishnadas who was accompanying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Vrindavan, if I recall. Well, maybe it was. Was there was a Kala Krishnadas who accompanied him in South India. But I believe there was a different person who accompanied him to Vrindavan and to the Jharikanda forest. But at any rate, those are some details that, let's say, vary in different texts, as I recall. As far as the author of the song that you refer to, I don't know which Krishnadasa that is. There's quite a few.
Okay, no, that's all right. Also, within the text, there's a passage where Murari Gupta says that Advaita Acarya composed a song which was made up of different names of Mahaprabhu in a similar way that Mahaprabhu Shatnam Stotra was composed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura. Do you happen to know where that might be available? Because it's not in the Caitanya-Carita of Murari Gupta, the song of Advaita Acarya.
No, I don't know any other reference to that. I believe Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has done that.
Right.
But outside of Murari's text, I know of no other reference to that, and I've never seen it, and I don't know anyone who has. So,
Okay.
Advaita.
Thank you anyway,
Okay.
Maharaj. Thank you anyway. Haribol.
Okay, so Kala Chenji was able to send me her question, so I'm just going to ask it for her. So she said, today we will bathe the Lords Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. This is the preparation for the Ratha-yatra. Is it culturally traditional for them to become sick and to be sequestered from the community?
Well, I think that's part of the Leela. I think that during the bathing ceremony of the Snan Yatra, it's thought that Jagannath gets a cold. Maybe then Balabhadra and Subhadra catch it from him. Anyway, that's the excuse for the isolation, if you will, which I believe then gives rise to suspicion on the part of Lakshmi, and what her husband's really up to. So typically then the devotees will isolate Jagannath, and I think in Jagannath Puri he's served like broths and fruit juices and things of that nature, lots of liquids, so I believe that was also carried out in the West in Prabhupada's temples surrounding the Ratha-yatra. So I'm not sure what your question is. Is it culturally appropriate? It's part of the Ratha-yatra Leela. So to observe that, I typically, from an external point of view, that there's a time when Jagannath is renovated, the deities may be repainted, something like that, externally. But internally, this is the idea. I think that Jagannath is faking it, though. And Lakshmi, as I said, becomes suspicious, and so there's she becomes upset in the context of that, and Mahaprabhu observed this. It's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, this pastime as well, with much delight. So you have a nice Jagannath deity there that you serve, right?
Yes, I do.
Temple. You're very blessed. Nice to see you again.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. I don't know if you can hear me.
Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Another question?
Yeah, so Kadamba has a question that she sent to me. And also everyone, this is the last question that I have. So if you have a question, just send me a message and you can ask it and I'll just get you on the queue. So I'm trying to scroll up. Okay, so her question is, she was wondering how to understand ontologically that Krishna never leaves Vraj.
Well, there are different ways to think about that. But I think that it's fair to say that Krishna is more present in Vrindavan in his apparent absence than he is present in Dwarka, for example, where he's apparently present. And that's a core central teaching of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. In other words, he's in Dwarka, but he's less present there in his presence than he is present in his apparent absence in Vrindavan. And how to understand that statement, that idea? Well, the idea is that the love of the inhabitants of Vrindavan is more intense and intimate, and he, Krishna, corresponds with that love. So wherever there's love of Krishna, greater degree of love of Krishna, he's present there in some way, in the form of that love, really. And we see that in the Dwarka Leela, for example, that at night the queens observe and hear him calling out in his dreams the names of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, his mother, his friends, his lovers, and so forth. And they know that he's with us, but his heart is there. Wherever your heart is, well, that's where you are, right? Regardless of where you may appear to be, we are where our heart is. So they have captured his heart in Vrindavan to a greater degree than any other devotee. So he's more present there in their love. That's one way to understand it. And also, when Krishna manifests his Mathura and his Dwarka Leela in the Prakat Leela, the manifest Leela on earth, then he appears to have left Vrindavan. That's true. But he manifests there as what appears to be what's called a spurti, or a hallucination. In Sakirasa, those hallucinations are taken for real. In Vatsalya Rasa and Madhurya Rasa, they're questioned in those bhavs, whether those hallucinations are actually real. Therefore, Krishna, for example, in order to assure Mother Yashoda that he was actually there when she had hallucinations of him, that he was present, told through a message what she was cooking and how he relished it and so forth. And similarly, he sent messages to the gopis to assure them that the spurtis of him were actually him. He was actually present there, by way of telling them details that only a person who was present would know. We didn't have to do that with his friends. The nature of the Sakiras is such full of confidence and so forth. So there's no doubt there about his fidelity. In Madhurya Rasa, there's a doubt. Does he really love me? And parents may doubt too, because after all, children grow up, they have their own lives and so forth and so on. But and that's a detail, but he's present in those spurtis. You could say that those spurtis are more him, for that matter, and constitute his actual presence, ongoing, continued presence in Vrindavan, than what's happening in Dwarka. That's a hallucination. in that he's less there than he is in Vrindavan. He's less there too, and there are aspects of him that aren't present. Obviously, he doesn't have a peacock feather. He's not carrying a flute. So is it even him? In Dwarka, he gave his peacock feather, he gave his flute to Subal and Stoka Krishna. When he went on, and some of his clothing also to them, told them to wear them and play his flute near the cows so that the cows would feel his continued presence. Anyway, he leaves his flute there. He doesn't wear a peacock feather. He's wearing a more regal attire, crown, and so on and so forth. In Dwarka, in his princely Leela. So Vrindavan Krishna is never there. He's never in Mathura. He's never in Dwarka. So where is he? He must be in Vrindavan. There's no other place for him. But it's a mystical type of presence that at the same time causes feelings of separation in the Prakat Leela, which by his apparent, leaving there, which serves to accentuate, showcase, underscore the measure of the love in Vrindavan, right? Which is what the Bhagavatam and the Prakat Leela is trying to teach us. Ultimately, from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's point of view, that the Vrindavan Leela is the highest ideal. So those are some thoughts about Krishna's presence in Vrindavan. I mean, he's not different from Vrindavan itself. Govardhan Hill is non-different from him. That we see, and so is the case with the entirety of the Dham. And that said, we could also comment that the Prakat Leela is characterized by separation, whereas the Aprakat Leela is characterized by union. And if we look at the Prakat Leela as like a trailer of the movie of the Aprakat Leela to attract us to going there and seeing the whole show, if you will. Well, in the Aprakat Leela, he doesn't leave Vrindavan. It's characterized by union. There is separation there, but for short periods of time only, not for the long period of time that we see apparently anyway in the Prakat Leela. But for many years he goes to Mathura and Dwarka. That doesn't happen in the Aprakat Leela. So with the Prakat Leela being a sample of the Aprakat Leela, containing the same bhavas, and in that sense being one with the Aprakat Leela, it nonetheless emphasizes separation, which is the low tide, if you will, of the ocean of prema through which we will enter that ocean and experience the high tide of union. So the Prakat Leela is particularly geared for sadhakas who take birth in the Prakat Leela, right? Having perfected themselves to that extent, and Krishna can't bear their separation, so he comes. But it is characterized in terms of difference from the Aprakat Leela by the separation, which again is the means for attaining the medium through which we attain union. Separation makes the heart grow fonder. We see the Dandakaranya sages, for example, to birth as gopis. But when it came time for the rasa dance, in the Prakat Leela, as it unfolds and Krishna reaches adolescence, they couldn't go. They were checked. later we see that they didn't die, but they died to whatever was remaining in them or lacking in them in terms of further developments of praying, like sneha, man, pranay, raga, mahabhav, to take part in the full face of the union. So that separation was the means through which their praying intensified, and then they were fully equipped, like the Nityasiddhas, to experience the union. I think it's later in the 42nd chapter that it's apparent that those gopis who could not go that night, who were checked by their husbands, that they didn't die. If they had died, that would have been a catastrophe. The whole thing would have been a disaster. They died to I don't want to say they really died to anything that they needed to get rid of, but they died in a sense in the fire of separation in terms of attaining that further intensification that was required, that they could only get and only acquire through the association of the Nityasiddhas for all intents and purposes. And that's the idea of the necessity, if you will, for taking birth in the Prakat Leela before entering the Aprakat Leela. So again, in Aprakat Leela, there is no such separation. Krishna is always in Vrindavan. So there's only an appearance that he's not in Vrindavan. Does that help? It's an interesting question. If you have any follow-up on that, I'll try to address it. Who asked the question?
Up a little bit. So who asked the question was Kadamba, and she sent it via messenger, well, like on the chat.
Okay, so maybe she's not here personally. Okay.
I think she is here.
I hope that helps.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, she'll send a message. Saragrahi.
Hare Krishna, Dandavats Guru Maharaj. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can see you too.
All right.
Yes.
Good morning or afternoon here. I have one question actually. I'm fine, thank you. Good to see you. I have one question actually. It's always coming to me like at least 3 times in the year, because 3 times in the year we're having some festivals coming, which are about our like wonderful Matajis. Like it's going to be on, I think on Tuesday, it will be Jahnava Devi appearance day. And then another day is Sita Thakurani of Advaita, and another in Visnupriya. So we have mostly these 3. And it's always only appearance day. So I just kind of wondered is that because we don't have any record of it, or is it some ontological way we should think or about it or understand it? And it's also like kind of good that I'm asking this question, because today is International Mother's Day, so it will be kind of connected. So that's my question.
Well, happy Mother's Day to everybody. I think that it's unlikely that the dates are unknown, such prominent persons, but like their other half, if you will, Advaita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, we don't celebrate their disappearance days. And that's and neither of Krishna. So that's typical. I think it's 2 things. It's a difficult leela for the devotees to digest the passing in the leela itself. It's thought that after Caitanya Mahaprabhu departed from the world, the devotees were at a loss for quite some time, even to come together and celebrate anything. I think the Keturi Gram festival, after quite some time, reinvigorated them, and they collected themselves, came together. So it's devastating for them. So it's not something that is remembered, celebrated like the appearance. And so the same would hold true for their consorts, right? Now, but their appearance days are listed and auspicious. I mean, there's also, obviously the philosophical point. Disappearance here means appearance there. Nobody disappears and so forth. But that's more Vedanta, which we're Vedantins, but we're Bhakti Vedantins. So from the Bhakti point of view, then we have cause for suffering and despair, and we have attachment and all such things. Madhavendra Puri, upon passing, was weeping and lamenting in Radha Bhav. One of his disciples, who has been influenced by the Advaita doctrine, that it's possible that Madhavendra Puri was also acquainted with and separated himself from that in light of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching, the Vaishnava teaching. As I've said before, there are a number of sannyasis in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission who came from the Advaita lineage, and probably through the Puri monastery where bhakti is emphasized, and some of them were converts. The famous Sridhar Swami was once the head of the math there, Shankar Math in Jagannath Puri, but he obviously converted to Vaishnavism. So anyway, Ramchandra Puri was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri who didn't move in the bhakti direction. At the time of the passing of Madhavendra Puri, where he was expressing lamentation, he told him, you shouldn't lament. He was giving him this Vedanta, which is like very dry. And meanwhile, his guru was experiencing the feelings, right? There's no place for feelings in Advaita Vedanta. Yeah, so, but in Bhakti Vedanta, there's so much place for feelings that the Vedanta gets obscured at times, and people wonder if it even is Vedanta. How can you be experiencing, the ups and downs of emotions that appear just like material emotions? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was criticized by the Mayavadins in Benares for being a babuka, an emotionalist, which is a beautiful term invoked in the Bhagavatam, actually in the third of the three introductory verses. The book is for babukas, so we'll have a taste for rasa. So, given that, then the feelings. I mean, we do honor the separation of gurus and in terms of their disappearance days and so forth. It's true, but it's not characteristic to do so for Bhagwan, and the same would hold true for his consorts. Okay, Jai. Mother's Day, Jai. What else? Okay. Any other question?
Yeah, there's definitely quite a few. I'll kind of spread out throughout the chat. So Bhajan had a question, and he says, Pranam Guru Maharaj, can you please explain the idea of the famous verse of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Matala Hari Jan Vishai Range Pula pujala, raga-patha, sorry, I'm like nervous today. Gaurava,
Pujala,
bhange.
raga-patha, gaurava, bhange. Yes, I learned about this verse from Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, who had it inscribed in stone in the Caitanya-Saraswati Mata. He thought that it very much characterized the approach of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura to Raga Marg, which was characteristically a departure from how many Gaudiyas were teaching about the Raga Marg. It's the verse itself is a line from a larger poem, the other verses of which don't seem to have been preserved, so we don't know them. But according to Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, this was a line in a poem composed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura that was sung by his disciples at the time of bringing the deity to the Bagh Bazar Mat. Bagh Bazar Mat is the famous marble temple of Calcutta. Wasn't customary for Gaudiya Vaishnavas to be in Calcutta, but rather in the Dham, in Navadvip or Jagannath Puri or Vrindavan. But he went to Calcutta to establish a temple there and do outreach, right? And funds were raised from local pious people, and it was an opulent temple. They threw opulence, money at the building, right? And the arrangements for the service of the deity. And this was not that customary at the time. Indeed, the younger brother of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, also a disciple of Bhakti Vinod, yes, I can't remember his name at the moment, but most of you know.
Lalit Prasad Thakur.
Lalit Prasad Thakur. He complained that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura had left the Raga Marg because he was building these big temples, which wasn't customary. Rather, an Harinam, bhajan, big temple worship was something more characteristic of, the Vaidhi Sampradayas. Of course, that idea of his doesn't seem to take into consideration the fact that the founding acharyas of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the Goswamis of Vrindavan, did arrange for, Radha Govinda temple, Radha Shamsundar, Radha Damodar, Radha Raman. These are big temples. But at any rate, at that time, it wasn't so much the custom. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura was not tied to any particular time, and he had a vision, really the vision of Bhakti Vinod Thakur that he wanted to give shape to, and that was to take Gaudiya Vaishnavism and put it on the stage along with the other world religions for comparison, to bring to light the contribution of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this Bagh Bazar temple is very symbolic of all that I'm talking about. And it was called a marble temple because it was Gaudiya people didn't have a lot of money. So to make a marble temple was costly. They collected from the people and threw the money at the temple, if you will. And some people complained, pious people also, why build a temple, spend all this money, you could be giving it to poor people who need food and so forth. God doesn't need a temple. No, God doesn't need a temple, that's true, but you need a temple to see where God is, and you should give your wealth to him. I said the other day, if you want to know how to chant attentively, just think of how you count your money, count your rounds in that way. You don't miss a beat there. You don't miss a rupee. And you count afterwards. Have I still got that? And how am I going to spend that? How much is left? And so forth. So as you think about money, also think about Krishna. How will you do that though? You have to give up your money. You have to see how worthless it is. It's meaningless. It's meaningless. It's made up. It's play money. It's counterfeit money. It cannot buy you that which you want, a place in eternity, real estate, a land beyond death. It doesn't have any power for that. Let me question the reality of Krishna Lila, of Goloka, whether it's imagination. But even our nation states are nothing more than human imagination. That's all they are. That we fight over and kill one another over. They're so much the reality, but they're just imaginary constructs. And trees like the redwoods here that have been around for 700 years, they can testify to that. Who owns what? Everyone's a renter here. Everyone's passing through only. So anyway, at any rate, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura wanted to emphasize this point, right? Give your wealth, throw it at the temple. So pujala raga-patha gaurava bhange mata harijan kirtanange. This was one of the lines, verses in this song, as they carried the deity to the temple. And the idea behind that is that while the rag marg is not a path in which the object of love is worshipped in awe and reverence, but rather in intimacy. The fact of the matter is that idea itself is awesome and worshipable and so high that we should venerate, if you will, the path of the rag marg and the position of those who are actually participating in that. Krishna's parshadas, his associates that he himself is non-different from. That internal, fullest manifestation of this internal energy that bhakti is constituted of. That may come, the generosity of the associates of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, of Krishna. That's a welfare state there. Everything's taken care of, everything's provided. That we might capture their attention and get their grace. So pujala raga-patha gaurava bhange matala harijan kirtanarange is one of the ways it's been written. Matala harijana vishaya range. So giving up worldliness, vishaya, give all that worldliness to Bhagawan, and worship with reverence, if you will, bow to the rag marg itself. And then pujala raga-patha gaurava bhange. Gaurava means here reverence. Then by doing that, and through giving up the worldliness and engaging it in the service of Bhagawan, or pujala raga-patha gaurava bhange matala kirtanarange. Later, I think it was adjusted by some to make the same point in another way, that by doing kirtan, Nam Kirtan, glorifying what is the Rag Marg. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura's discussions about the Braj Leela and Rag Marg were characterized by being 80% in content about that which the Rag Marg is not, 20% about what it is, and discussing it. So to do kirtan, to preach, on the one hand, kirtan and Vishaya, or to give this opulence, whatever we have, spend it on Bhagwan, if you will, and Radha and Krishna in their service, then gaurava bhange, that reverence for the Rag Marg will be broken naturally, because the associates of Bhagwan, his Swarup Shakti, will become very much inclined towards us by revering that, putting it in perspective, how high it is, rather than thinking that you can go there with your shoes on and cheapening it. It's not an easy thing to attain. The path is easy in terms of its application comparatively, compared to Gyan Marg, Tapas, Yoga. These are very difficult paths in all respects. Bhakti is comparatively easier, but its goal is comparatively also much higher. So, and it's easier to misunderstand it also. And so he was very much concerned, and Bhakti Thakur was too, about a cheapening of that ideal. And so he engaged his students in widespread kirtan, opening temples, active service, where all of their energy was spent in such. And rather than prematurely, if you will, sitting and doing bhajan and trying to kind of, from his point of view, force your way in, so to speak, rather than try to put it another way, to see God, act in such a way as God would want to see you. So rather than try to force your way into the Rag Marg, act in such a way that the Rag Marg will open itself up to you, gaurava bhange, and allow you in naturally and so forth. So that's basically what the verse is about, and I think it's a good verse. I think it's appropriate. And I've seen over half a century now, even in my time, a number of persons leave the spirit of this verse in the name of entering into the Rag Marg, and sitting and doing bhajan, and not getting too far with that, ending up in a university, criticizing Gaudiya Vaishnavism, becoming a Sahajiya in the true sense of the term, other things. Some cases, not such an extreme adverse reaction, but that Braj Prem, that Rag Bhakti, nonetheless was not manifesting in their hearts at any quicker rate by trying to sit and do bhajan, like the Goswamis did, for example, who also built temples, wrote books, and were active as well. So I would embrace that verse. I feel very confident about its emphasis and that approach to the Rag Marg. Again, we revere the Rag Marg itself. We have reverence for it, which is a marg in which love for Krishna is beyond reverence for Krishna, where you take him as your friend, as your lover. I mean, it's just a mind-boggling idea. Theistically, we may become a little accustomed to having heard about it, and it seems, it kind of becomes normalized, if you will, and the height of what it actually is another thing. But if you try to talk about it to other people, you realize this is a pretty bewildering idea. If you try to share that with others, where do we even start? It's very extreme, extraordinary contribution to the religious world. So when you're speaking about it like that, you can, I think it fosters the kind of regard for that ideal that would be there in any genuine Rag Marg devotee. And that, again, in contrast to those who take it cheaply, which is how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura used the word sahaja. Obviously, there's a group called Prakriti Sahajas, and they have a certain siddhanta and so on and so forth. The Bhakti Vinod and others consider them a deviant representation of Caitanya Mahaprabhu's tradition, and for good reason. And that's acknowledged universally amongst Gaudiya Vaishnavas and amongst academics who study the subject as well. But the broader sense of the term, sahaja, as Bhaktisiddhanta starts to use it, was to cheapen the ideal. He very much wanted to protect his disciples from that. And what will that do for the dissemination of the teaching in the world? Because if it becomes cheapened, I mean, an objective party can see, like, you say one thing, but you're talking about paraki with Krishna, but you're doing paraki with somebody else here on earth. It doesn't match up. That kind of thing would not only negatively impact your own progress, but it would have negative implications on the dissemination of this beautiful idea that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu came to give. So that how will that please them? So these are some thoughts on that. I hope that helps, Bhajan Das or Dasi, as may be the case. I haven't met you personally yet, but I hope to in the future. Does that help? I hope.
I guess I would get it in the chat because they asked it through the chat.
Okay.
There's one more question in Spanish. Do you want to take another question? How are you feeling?
Sure.
Okay. Shama Sundar,
Okay.
do you see the question? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I would say that what you want to do in your spiritual practice is convert your enjoying ego into a serving ego. So the net result of ahamkar is that you've made up kar, aham, a sense of I, and that sense of I is arising in terms of details out of our senses, contact with sense objects, and our minds determining whether we like it or dislike it, and so on and so forth. So from the basic ahankar, identification with matter, in terms of the details of that identification, a psychological ego also arises, and a full sense of worldly identity and so forth. But the basis of all that is the enjoying spirit. The Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura once described or defined humility as absence of the enjoying spirit. So we look at things, we taste things, we smell things, we hear things, and so forth, the world around us, if you will, and make determinations about them in our mind, whether they're good or bad, and so forth. But these things have no real bearing on what they are. This is just a made-up, thing that a misperception. And we take the life out of the world. We say that Vrindavan, everything is alive, everything is conscious. Well, in one sense, the spirit of that is, well, if you take out the enjoying spirit where you're exploiting things, separating them from their source by seeing them as objects for your illusory sense of self, made up of senses and their enjoyment, if you disconnect the world from that perception, which disconnects them from their source, and put them excavate their connection with their source, then they come to life. Then they are what they are. Everything belongs to God. It's for God's purpose. That's a fact. That's what's seen in Vrindavan. So you, by the exploited disposition of material identification, you make everything dead. But when you pull out from that, everything's alive. So Mahaprabhu said every tree is a kalpavriksha, every body of water is the Jamuna. And he was right. So that's the basic idea of the way we describe spiritual life in terms of Leela. Everything's alive. We take the life out of it, and excuse me. And by identifying with matter, well, we experience the potential that we won't exist, that we have to die, and so forth. So to convert the exploitive disposition to the serving disposition, that's where it said that Kam is to serve the senses, and Prem is to serve the senses of Krishna, Krishnendriya Priti Vancha. The desire to serve the senses of Krishna, that's Prem, and Kamendriya Priti, the desire or love of the senses from the point of view of our material identification, our mind's determination, whether this sensation is good or that's bad. This is kama. The two look similar, but there are the difference between night and day in reality. So sadhana bhakti is about fostering this service attitude and trying gradually to see and the world as I'm describing it, and make all of the contact of our senses with sense objects be such that it's for the pleasure of Krishna's senses rather than our own, even if it may be unpleasant for our senses. Or we may even forgo something that's pleasing to our senses, but it's not pleasing to Krishna's senses. So this is how we convert the in Mayavad or in Advaita Vedanta or Gyan, let's say the Gyan Marg, which is venerable, then the idea is also to give up the enjoying spirit, right? But in Bhakti Marg, we give up the enjoying spirit by cultivating the serving spirit, which is the extreme opposite. So, you could dig a hole and bury all your bad qualities in it and cover it up, and hope that they don't resurface. But if you build a temple on it and do kirtan on it, it's never going to come up again. So Gyan is like that. You just dig a hole through everything in there, but and then build anything on top of it. So, because Gyan, after all, is governed by Sattva-gun. So you can't get a permanent situation out of that alone. Mix a little bhakti in, good. And if you think, well, if bhakti is that ingredient which makes it all work, why not do only bhakti? That makes sense. And what will be the result? So anyway, to convert the serving, the exploitative and enjoying spirit into a dedicated and serving disposition. Therefore, Atashi Krishna Namadi Navaved Krayam Indre Sevan Mukhe Jivadho Swayameva Sparateda. If you want the swarti, the hallucination, the manifestation of Krishna, to see him, well, he will dance on your tongue when you serve him appropriately by chanting with the serving ego. So Tashi Krishna Namadi, with material senses, you cannot experience Krishna. But with the serving attitude, beginning with chanting, then you can convert that very easily. So the best defense is a good offense, they say. Right? So our offense is to serve Krishna. It brings about the defense against that which material life constitutes, the attraction between the senses and the sense objects that foster, which is your question is, our material identity. What is our material identity? If you want to refer to it as ahankar, what is our material identity? I like this, I don't like that. This tastes good, this tastes bad. Those are determinations that are made in the mind, kalpa, sankalpa, vikalpa, based on the impressions that we gather of the world through the senses. Those determinations should be rejected, and as a Sharanagata, we should accept that a new standard of what is favorable and what is unfavorable, what is good and what is bad. And that is sankalpa, vikalpa, what is it? Anukul, pratikul. So what is favorable for Krishna's service? That's good. What's not favorable? That's bad. We got a new good and bad now. And if you apply yourself as a Sharanagata, like the false ego will just completely dissipate. And you rise above the dualities of material existence very easily. So Sharanagati, when it's in place, then we're in a good position to do bhajan. Bhajan is really done on the platform of Advaita Gyan Tattva. And that will arise out of this transcending the dualities of material existence. Sharanagati is the way. It's a simple formula. It's a little hard to apply ourselves. It's sometimes a bitter pill to swallow, but that's favorable for Krishna. But my mind and senses say it won't be so pleasing to me. But die to live. As Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj used to say, it's very poetic, but it's a bitter pill to swallow sometimes. But that's okay. Material life looks good on the outside, but it's actually bitter, because happiness in material life is just the beginning of the suffering that it leads to. So those are some concluding thoughts for today, and my answer to the last question. Thank you for all your questions and your time. We'll be together again on the weekend, on Saturday, for Nrsimha Chaturdasi and the following Sunday. Gaur Premanandi, Haribol.
Thank you, Gurudev.
Jai Ram, Jai Krishna, Jai Radhe, Hari.
So just some quick little announcements. So as Gurudev said, I'm pretty sure, next Saturday is Nrsimha Chaturdasi. So he's going to be giving a class. Let me get all my Sri Chaitanya Sangha stuff up. Here we go. Let's see. Come Okay, so yeah, he's going to be giving a class at the same time, but on Saturday. So in 6 days at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Daylight Savings Time. And you can figure out what that looks like for you time-wise. And then, yeah, there are less classes. So on Tuesdays, Ashram Maharaj is giving classes, Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 5, Acting with Detachment. And on Thursday, Shamananda is giving class, Gaudiya Vaishnavism in Numbers. And then on Friday, Indra is giving class, Transitions on the Journey of the Devotee. And then Archana wanted me to make the comment that, yeah, we've gotten there's just been a lot of donations to the whole Zoom thing. And just, we're both feeling really, really grateful for that. And everyone's feeling grateful for that because this is like a huge service in the Sangha. So just thank you for that. That's really, really kind and beneficial to all of us. Yeah, I'm just really grateful. Yeah, we're all grateful. So yeah, I think that's all. And I will see y'all virtually. Is that, yeah, are you going to say something, Sajjan? I saw that you unmuted.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because there is the Nishringa Chaturdasi class on Saturday.
Is there going to be?
Is there
I was
going
about
to
to
be a
ask
gathering
that.
on Sunday as well?
Yeah, I'll send him an email and ask.
He said he was going to give. He said, "I'll see you next Saturday and Sunday when you."
And Sunday, okay. Maybe we should still
yeah.
clarify.
Yeah. Well, right now he's planning on doing both days.
Yeah.
So
okay. Okay.
Check everybody should check the email that Nanda Kumar sends out on Friday or Saturday.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
And
I think that's all.
Yeah, thanks to everybody.
So there is a gathering next Sunday as well, yes or no?
I think so, but yeah, just be aware, just be looking at your email just to make sure when that comes up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I will see all y'all and hear y'all virtually soon. Okay, there you go.
Those are virtual those are virtual gatherings, right? We can't actually go to the ashram. Bummer.
No, yeah, I think they're just virtual.
Open up the ashram.
Yeah, they should open up the ashram. This is, hopefully we can get that happening soon so we can all meet in person.
Yeah, yeah, we could check in with that. I think Adari is a little bit like closed off right now. Yeah, I mean, I'm on the other side of the country, so I don't necessarily know. You can ask and check into that. Yeah. Okay.